the host of the hostel. Traveling solo through Romania was supposed to be my big adventure, a chance to explore the rugged beauty of the Carpathian Mountains, disconnect from the grind of daily life, and meet people from all corners of the world. For the first few days, everything went exactly as planned. I wandered through ancient forests, admired the misty peaks, and marveled at medieval castles perched on rocky outcrops. But then I found the hostel. It wasn't in any guidebook, nor had I seen it on any of the travel forums I'd scoured before my trip. I stumbled across it entirely by accident after taking a wrong turn while hiking a remote mountain trail. As I descended into a narrow valley, the trees opened up to reveal a small, picturesque building, a traditional Romanian house with a steep, shingled roof and brightly painted wooden shutters. A hand-carved sign hung over the door, simply reading Casa Veche, the old house. Sweating and exhausted from the hike, I figured it was worth a shot. I walked up to the door and knocked. A moment later, it creaked open, revealing a man in his late 40s. He was tall and lean, with sharp features softened by a welcoming smile. "Welcome, welcome," he said in heavily accented English. "I'm Bogdan, the owner. You look like you could use a place to rest." Relieved, I stepped inside. The interior was cozy and rustic, with wooden beams, stone walls, and a large fireplace that dominated the common room. A few travelers lounged on worn-out sofas, chatting quietly. Bogdan led me to the front desk, where I signed in and paid a shockingly low rate for a room. "We like to keep things simple here," Bogdan explained as he handed me a key. "No Wi-Fi, no distractions, just good company and beautiful nature." He wasn't wrong about the company. That evening, I joined the other guests, a group of 3 travelers from Germany, a couple from France, and an American named Sarah, who was also traveling alone. Over a hearty dinner, we exchanged stories about our journeys, laughed over shared mishaps, and made plans to explore the surrounding area together. Bogdan joined us later, pouring homemade plum brandy and regaling us with tales of local legends and mountain folklore. His stories were captivating, and his hospitality made me feel like I had stumbled upon a hidden gem. As the night wore on, I felt a sense of camaraderie with these strangers, a rare connection that only happens in the fleeting moments of travel. The next morning, we set off as a group to hike deeper into the mountains. The trails were challenging, but the scenery was worth every grueling step. We stopped to rest at a breathtaking overlook, where Bogdan suggested we take a detour to visit a nearby cave, a spot few tourists ever see. Excited by the prospect of adventure, we agreed. The path to the cave was narrow and treacherous, but Bogdan led the way with practiced ease. When we finally reached the entrance, I hesitated. There was something off about the place, an unsettling darkness that seemed to seep out from within. But Bogdan was already inside, calling us to follow. The cave was larger than I'd expected, with narrow passages that twisted and turned, leading us deeper underground. The air grew colder, and the walls were slick with moisture. Our flashlights barely penetrated the inky blackness, and I began to feel claustrophobic. Just as I was about to suggest we turn back, we entered a chamber that opened up into a vast, domed space. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like jagged teeth, and the floor was littered with rocks and debris. "What is this place?" Sarah whispered, her voice echoing in the cavern. Bogdan didn't answer. Instead, he disappeared into one of the side tunnels. The others followed, their voices growing distant as they ventured further into the cave. I hesitated, the sense of unease gnawing at me, but I didn't want to be left alone in the darkness. When I finally caught up to them, they were standing in front of a large metal door set into the rock wall. It was old and rusted, with no visible handle or keyhole, just a small, intricate carving in the center. Bogdan studied it for a moment, then produced a small object from his pocket, a key, ornate and ancient-looking. He slid it into the carving, and with a heavy groan, the door creaked open. The stench hit me first, a rancid metallic odor that made my stomach turn. The others recoiled as well, but Bogdan seemed unfazed. He stepped inside, and one by one, we followed. The room beyond was a nightmare. Chains and manacles hung from the walls, and the floor was stained dark with old blood. In the dim light of our flashlights, I could see what looked like torture devices. Rusted iron cages, spiked chairs, a rack. Panic surged through me, but I was frozen in place, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. "What the hell is this?" one of the Germans, a guy named Lars, demanded, his voice shaking. Bogdan turned to us, his friendly smile gone. In its place was a cold, calculated expression that sent a shiver down my spine. "Welcome to the true Kasavech," he said, his voice low and menacing. "This is where the real fun begins." Before anyone could react, the door slammed shut behind us, and we were plunged into darkness. I heard Sarah scream, followed by the sounds of a struggle. I fumbled for my flashlight, my heart pounding in my chest. When I finally managed to switch it on, the beam of light revealed a scene of chaos. Bogdan had produced a knife from somewhere, and the others were desperately trying to fend him off. Instinct took over. I turned and ran, blindly charging down the tunnel we had come from. I didn't know if I was going in the right direction, only that I had to get out. Behind me, I could hear the others shouting, their voices growing fainter as I stumbled through the darkness. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning in ways I couldn't remember. My flashlight flickered, threatening to die, and I pushed myself harder, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I could hear footsteps behind me. Bogdan's, I was sure of it. He was chasing me, hunting me like an animal. Finally, I saw a faint light up ahead. I sprinted toward it, my legs burning with the effort. As I reached the entrance of the cave, I burst into the open air, nearly collapsing from exhaustion. But I couldn't stop. I had to keep moving. The forest was dense and disorienting, but I forced myself to keep going, crashing through the undergrowth in a blind panic. I didn't dare look back, knowing that if I did, I might see Bogdan's twisted smile right behind me. After what felt like hours, I stumbled onto a dirt road. I had no idea where I was, but it didn't matter. I started running again, driven by sheer terror, until I saw headlights approaching in the distance. I waved my arms frantically, praying that whoever was driving would stop. The car slowed, and I threw myself in front of it, desperate for help. The driver, a middle-aged Romanian man, rolled down his window and stared at me in shock. "Please, help me!" I gasped, barely able to get the words out. "There's a man! He's trying to kill us!" The man quickly unlocked the door, and I scrambled inside. As he sped away, I glanced back at the dark forest, half expecting to see Bogdan emerging from the trees. But there was nothing, just the silent, oppressive night. The driver took me to the nearest town, where I stumbled into the local police station, still shaking with fear. I tried to explain what had happened, but my story sounded insane, even to my own ears. The police took me seriously enough to send a few officers to investigate, but when they returned, they said they found nothing. No hostel, no cave, no sign of anyone else. It was as if Kasavech had never existed. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to process what had happened. I was alive, but the others, I didn't know what had become of them. The police assured me they were searching, but I knew in my heart that they were gone. The horror of that night never left me. It haunted my dreams, and even now, years later, I can't shake the feeling that Bogdan is still out there, waiting in the mountains for his next unsuspecting victims. And every time I see a picture of the Carpathian Mountains, I feel a sickening dread, knowing that somewhere in those dark, twisted woods lies a place where human monsters do unspeakable things to their fellow man. A place I barely escaped with my life.